I mean, there must be a meeting at the library too.
Yeah.
Well, there's a video night at the Horse and Pens.
Oh, right.
Maybe she wanted to see the part of it, but the other reason, there's a lot of characters.
I wonder.
We would definitely invite you. All right, we're streaming. Hopefully, hopefully people can hear on various devices here.
Oh, yeah. Great.
Streamers.
No.
Yeah,
And you looked into, yes, okay.
waiting, I looked at what that bill has.
Which is?
Wild.
First,
No, I remember first, it's,
Okay, I think we're ready to go. Hopefully, our Zoom participants can hear. We're continuing to stream live to Lewisboro TV on YouTube by popular demand, because this is such a popular committee. I'm told that this is one of the few committees that is still Zooming and streaming. If anyone has comments one way or the other about whether we should continue to do that, obviously I've addressed it with the board, but from the public side, happy to hear those in the public comments. But the beauty of streaming also is it's very easy to do minutes, but also in lieu of minutes, you don't have to wait until the next meeting. And when we approve the minutes, you can watch it on Lewisboro TV on YouTube. We're all about transparency here. So welcome everybody. We have not, as was alluded to earlier by one of our repeat audience members, we have not met since February of last year. And I think there's a number of good reasons for that. One is, when reviewing the minutes from the last meeting in preparation for this one, we were all excited about preparing for a work session with the town board with the Verizon and inviting the other carriers to participate in that. There's always been a desire by the community, and I think from the AV as well, to hear directly from the carriers, because they ultimately decide not only where towers go, but they fund the towers, and so their opinion matters quite a bit. As much as we love having Manny here from Homeland Towers, who's joined us again tonight to give us his perspective on what the carriers are, give their view. We'd always wanted to hear from them directly. Couldn't do that, and then we felt like we were sort of at an impasse beyond that, kind of talking about the same things again and again, because we're kind of at this inflection point where we need to get a tower put up in the south to serve the South Salem area, and then move on to what the next towers could be, which are very well outlined in the Cityscape study that was completed, I guess, a couple of years ago now. And looking at the situation in South Salem, the two alternatives that we keep coming back to are the Salt Dome, which has been proposed extensively, I would say, and repeatedly. And then the other alternative that we had investigated and continue to investigate was the South Salem Presbyterian Church steeple and build a cell tower, if you will, within that. And I think it's, I'll pull the board as well, but I think it's the AV's position that it's time to move forward with one or the other of those sites so that we can address the, I think the overwhelming sentiment from the surveys that we've done, that the community wants an improvement in cellular coverage for the town. And the longer that this goes on, the longer they're waiting for that need to be addressed. So we're resuming meetings now in the hopes that we can push progress forward. So our agenda tonight is primarily going to be looking at those two alternatives, and we'll get some updates from Manny, who I mentioned is here from Home Towers, as well as from Sam Dodge, one of our board members who has been part of the efforts with the church steeple project, so we can provide some updates there. In addition to that, we'll kind of do briefly look at any other developments that we're aware of that influence cellular coverage in town, including additional towers that are going up in neighboring towns. And then I asked Brian, who was always good at giving us an update on the emergency services. The news on fiber to the home from Optimum is not great. So we do have nothing significant to report there, other than it continues to be delayed. And I've given up on putting much credence behind the updates that we get that it's coming this quarter or next quarter or the quarter after that. So I think that's our agenda. Our first order of business would be to approve the minutes. So do I have a second for that? So hopefully everyone got a chance to review the minutes I circulated. Any objections to approving the minutes? All right, so approved. Minutes from February.
Done.
Okay, done. Thank you, Sam. So yeah, small update, and I think I said the October 23rd minutes in the agenda that I posted to the town website, but the February 7th minutes have been approved. We'll get that posted to the website. But again, you can watch the YouTube video if you really want all the interesting details from the last minute. So let's dive right in. Well, how do we? I guess one other housekeeping note that I wanted to mention before I forget. I heard through the grapevine that Chris Nelson, who hasn't really been a part of the board, but is officially or semi-officially our school district liaison, is retiring, and so we probably need to think about whether we want to replace our liaison to the school board, because they
I think he was
Do anything?
he came to the first two meetings, I think, when we were in COVID. Because the school district owns all the bandwidth in town, or not all of it, but the majority of it. And during COVID, there was a lot of focus on zooming into the classrooms, et cetera. But I just want to make a note of that publicly, because if we feel like we need to resume that liaison role, we need to find a new representative. So how do we want to begin? Do we want to start with Manny? We want to start with you, Sam? What do you?
On the agenda, it says, let's start with Homeland Towers. So,
all right,
Manny.
done. Manny, thank you for coming. You've always been generous with your time, and appreciate it.
It's not a far drive, so I can always be here. Where do I start? Not much progress has been made, obviously, like you said, since the last time we spoke about this. I think there was an effort to try and solve the problem in South Salem and this part of town over the border in Ridgefield through the placement of a site on a high elevation water tank in Ridgefield that Aquarium controlled. For about a year, or much longer than a year, but in the past year, the result is that Aquarium is not moving forward with a facility. They're not willing to host the facility. So that option is out the window right now.
Okay.
And.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I thought there was already a T-Mobile antenna
so-
there.
So there is and you would have to speak to Aquarium about this, but, our experience is that, you know, a decade ago or 2 decades ago, Aquarium entertained to, host, solar facilities on their water tanks, to alleviate siting problems, right? And that makes sense. And through community and public pressure, there's a number of facilities on Aquarium water tanks throughout Connecticut. However, in the past 10 years or so, they've changed their position. And they don't want them anymore. They haven't signed a lease for a wireless facility, as far as I know, in more than a decade. And are quite frankly, looking to get people off their water tanks. So I think realistically, and a good effort was made there of about 2 years to try and make that happen. Unfortunately, that doesn't look like it's gonna happen.
Okay.
That brings us back to probably the more correct way of solving the problem is putting a site where the problem exists. Not trying to cover it from really far away, which eventually would probably present some problems anyway, technically. So South Salem is where the need is. That's where a facility should really go.
Mhm.
And then the question is, did we really look at everything that is out there? I think we have, short of putting an ad in the local paper for anyone who wants to lease us. I think we've looked at everything.
I think we
that's
put
out
the
there.
call out.
I think
through this board.
and made it very clear that we were looking and anyone that was interested, and we're down to the Salt Dome as a site that's been designed, it's been looked at, it's been considered. I don't think anyone felt comfortable at the time to move forward with because they needed to feel that it was the last and only option left.
Mhm.
I think was made clear to us, just reading the tea leaves, talking to people, feeling the sentiment. So we backed off. We then did a lot of design work at the church. We fully designed a new steeple that can accommodate 3 carriers. Unfortunately, none of the carriers have approved that design and that facility right now. The only facility that is technically approved by the ARC engineers is the Salt Dome at
Okay,
130 feet.
okay.
What does that mean for us? We're a developer. We don't design the network, so we kind of have to, follow what the carrier's lead is on these decisions, on technical decision in particular. So our feeling is that we don't think that there's going to be another alternative that's any better than these 2. As a company, as a developer, I think it's smart for us to move forward with an agreement with the church,
Okay,
because there seems to be a willingness on the part of the church to do that.
And the public too.
And I think it makes sense for us to have that as an option for the carriers and go and put that. We'd already did the engineering effort. Let's put an agreement together. Maybe that changes the mind of the carriers. I'm not sure.
okay.
Technically, I will tell you, they are correct. The Salt Dome is better.
Uh-huh,
There's no doubt. It's about compromising concessions and what they're willing to live with and fund. And that's you said it, they fund. So it's very important. They have to be okay with it, or else it doesn't matter what I think, what any of us thinks. So I think the logical thing to do at the moment is to pursue agreement with the church. But I will tell you that doesn't mean that the carriers are ever gonna go there. I think that we want to show the effort to show that it's available.
okay. And that sort of is the clear
Well, I'm
signal.
going back to the idea of if we're gonna do a tower at the Salt Dome, it better be the only thing left
Okay,
to consider, and we should really make sure there's nothing else.
It's tough not to have like Verizon come in and, speak to them directly, you know what I mean?
It's very.
AT&T or anybody.
These carriers don't even go to zoning hearings anymore, let alone to meetings like this. You gotta understand the world that we live in today. No one
mhm,
who's an employee there is gonna feel comfortable here making representations, commitments, or anything to you without having everyone on board 100%. You know, it's
Mhm.
very difficult. That's corporate America. We're closer to the action. We're smaller. We're more, aware of things in the communities and information out there. We're the ones entrusted in finding the sites, right? We don't approve them. We don't say they're okay. We don't design them,
Mm-hmm.
but we find them. And then we develop them once they're approved. I think it makes sense for us to do that here. Verizon's a position, and I checked with them as recently as last week. Is that the Salt Dome is the only site that's approved by them.
Okay.
That's their formal position.
So they won't go anywhere else. Is that what you're saying?
That's their position today.
They won't go anywhere else.
There is no, so the option is the church steeple or the Salt Dome.
Right,
They're
and they're
saying
saying no.
Salt Dome, there's no to the church steeple, yes to the Salt Dome.
Alright, okay.
And that's the position today. I'm not saying that that isn't gonna change,
Right.
and I'm kind of betting that it might, obviously.
Mhm.
Given that's the alternative, right?
I think it's the smart thing to do right now. I live in this town. I don't wanna build a tower that's not needed. But I think ultimately that's not our decision.
Mhm.
And then eventually, my suggestion is this. We go down this course, if that doesn't work and move the dial with the carriers, then the town board is gonna have a difficult decision to make. And if the town board isn't willing to make that decision, then in situations like that, our recommendation is put it out to a referendum.
Okay. So that, and,
Which every municipal lease is subject to referendum anyway,
uh-huh,
subject to, not necessarily gonna happen. So we find ourselves in these situations in the past, and when we're in these type of situations, if it comes to that, if the church steeple ultimately is not something the carriers wanna do, then, and if the town property, which is subject to an RFP referendum anyway, not an RFP, no, subject to an referendum anyway. And the board isn't 100% comfortable in making that decision, then you put it out to the public. That's the logical thing to
Mhm.
do. It's a rational thing to do. It's a smart thing to do.
Maybe we should do that now.
So
Well, that's actually.
those are the
Yeah.
two suggestions. So you can do them. My suggestion right now is, look, we waited this long.
yeah,
Another couple of days, right?
Let's see if getting a lease at the church steeple and putting that in front of the carriers moves the dial and gets them to accept.
okay,
Is
It
that
may
meaningful to-
very well do that. I'm not sure. Technically, there's some issues. But I feel like it's worth trying. There's a desire to do it. I've listened to everybody. That's preferable, obviously. So not to put more effort there, I think is foolish, because I don't think anyone would feel comfortable that we did everything we could to prevent a tower at the Salt Dome, right?
mm-hmm,
So that's my feeling, but ultimately, if that doesn't work, and we're here in another year,
yeah.
town board's gotta do something. You can't.
I don't wanna wait another, I said the exact same thing a year ago.
Yes,
that's
Well, I don't
exactly-
wanna be sitting here.
Yeah,
discussing this.
It sounds like
Before,
a recommendation of town board to.
I'm trying to,
No,
I'm trying to do the right,
And you said
Logical thing.
we're all in favor of the steeple, the church steeple. I don't think that's a good solution. I don't think they're gonna find, if we waste another 6 months, and I'm sorry.
Did you talk to Verizon? No, well.
Yeah, just like, no, just
Okay.
talk to
How do you
Verizon
think
with
it-
a proposal. They're gonna come back and say, it's technically, it's compromise.
Let's
And
go
you
to
can't-
let's go to a referendum then.
Why do we have to have a referendum? We have a town board that was elected. to make
Okay.
these
Yeah,
decisions.
That's actually
Why
a
do we
good
have to make
idea.
So-
decisions?
Just
I'm
worry
actually
about the
curious.
lawyers. that
So it's
guys have
interesting.
On the other side.
So, I mean, so
How much money do you wanna throw? at
this
it?
becomes an issue for the town board.
Exactly.
We
How
should
they
speak
want
to them.
know.
yeah,
They have to make a decision. The last time we put it in front of them, they weren't ready to make a decision,
mm-hmm,
because it was clear. So, you know,
I think part of the job of this group is to go through these processes and get it to a place where the town board can be ready to make a decision, right? Assure them that we've
Right.
done all this investigation, that we've tried everything. Because if I was one of them and I was likely to be on the receipt of a whole bunch of angry letters from people that live in the town that don't want a tower in any particular location. I would want to be able to say to them, we did all these things to try and locate it at this site and we weren't able to. So I get that we can't keep spinning our wheels, doing the same thing forever and ever and ever, because no one wants to make a hard decision. I get that. And at the end of the day, that's the town board's job.
Mhm.
But I feel like if we're in danger of them doing that same thing if we don't present them with, we've gone down every avenue and here's what we looked at and here's the possible sites and here's what we've done. And, I don't know, Manny, my question for you is it meaningful to the carriers if you have a site but the town steeple, like the steeple, that has significantly less public opposition to it? Does that make a difference to them, or are they just really concerned with the site?
When you say significantly what?
Like less kind of potential for public opposition?
Oh, right, opposition.
Yeah.
But the
So-
coverage difference between the steeple and the salt dome is not huge.
So that,
Well, that's-
exactly, so that's
that's
my
the
question.
That's the
Like,
entire
There's
point of
like
the carrier
four-
is that it is significant. That's
Yeah.
why they don't want the
So-
church steeple.
Wait, hold on.
So that's the
Let's-
question,
hold on.
are they?
Now, the question is, we went through the whole study, right?
So.
Okay, not, hold on a second, Manny, let me just finish.
Okay, go ahead.
The study wasn't done by me. Wasn't done by this group, it wasn't even done by Lewisburg. It was done by an outside agency
Mhm.
that has no skin in the game.
Right.
So, and their studies, which I have on my computer now, their studies show there isn't a significant difference in the coverage between the salt dome and the church.
You're talking about
Okay,
cityscape?
this is, I'm sorry, the
The
cityscape.
cityscape side
They,
study.
Yeah.
they investigated the steeple?
It's right, yeah, it's right here.
Yeah.
Well, as a side project, I
It's a
had
shorter
asked them to evaluate a
No,
hypothetical
like, new
steeple
steeple
versus
would be
the
taller.
salt dome site.
Oh,
So-
weird.
But again, that is their model, which
Yeah,
is
but
not
you
the
wouldn't have
Verizon
to put
model.
30 feet,
Yeah.
because the church is
Let
higher
me
than
just
where the
speak
salt
to-
dome would be.
All right, let's.
Let me just speak to the different models that people use. Cityscapes work is very good, I think. I think it's highly conservative, it's more conservative than I would put it in there, but it's
Yeah.
good, it's good. I question some of the smaller sites that are needed in the future and things like that.
Mhm.
Where it's more accurate, where it's more obvious is when we talk about the macro sites, okay?
Mhm.
They did do a comparison and there is not a hell lot of difference, I agree, between the church and the salt dome. But where there is difference is important to the carriers.
Okay,
And that's it's all about what their existing network looks like, more than what an individual site covers. And based on their existing network and what their needs are, the Salt Dome is a much better site than the.
and is that based on Verizon subscribers?
It's based on where the existing sites are.
Okay,
That's what it's based on.
okay,
And it's also based on where the most traffic is gonna be. There's a lot of factors.
okay,
You gotta remember, these guys are running 3 to 5 different frequencies off a site. They're putting 3 to 4,000 pounds of equipment up on each rat center. So each carrier has 3 to 4,000 pounds of equipment on a tower.
Mhm.
When we go to a church steeple, they can't put 3 to 4,000 pounds of equipment each on a church steeple. So there are compromises, not only in coverage, but whether they can handle all 3, 4, or 5 frequencies that they have. Whether they can put up enough equipment in that steeple to do the job. So it isn't just a comparison of pure coverage, it's a comparison of equipment and frequencies and what the site can do. Many times
that would
people tell
ultimately
me.
impact capacity.
Exactly, so many times people, why are you still building those ugly towers? Because they are extremely functional. They do the job the way it's supposed to be done. When you start toying with that and trying to, downsize and put everything in a smaller space or lower elevation or in a structure that isn't optimal for down tilts and aiming antennas, there's compromises, there's loss. And I think, so I don't want you guys to get too focused on just the coverage comparison between the two sites.
Okay,
There's a lot of other things that go into
Yeah.
this, okay? Just the amount of equipment. There's a large discomfort when when these carriers are forced into a small environment with their equipment.
okay,
They can't put everything in there. And I think it's, we assume technology is just there and it's just like magic. But in order for them to be able to, for your phones and devices to do what they do, there's not one frequency that can do that anymore. There's not one antenna that can do that anymore. These guys have 3 to 5 different types of antennas. They have 3 to 5 different frequencies, sometimes 6. They're low band, high band. They all propagate and work very differently. So let me explain to you the difference. Okay, so let's say I have a boomer site, okay, covers miles. Very rare these days. Well, what can you get from that? You can make a phone call. You can send a text, receive a text. Can you send a document? No. Can you stream? No. Can you do anything beyond that? Probably not.
So you're talking about 5G.
We're talking 5G, 6G, 7G. We're talking about not so much generations of the technology, because that's all it means. We're talking about the frequencies and how they work. And they work in different ways. The 5G frequencies, for example, very weak and they don't travel very far, but they're excellent quality, right? So they're great for certain things. And then you have, your 4G, which is, when they started using 4G LTE, taking advantage of the lower frequencies, it propagates very well. It covers a larger area, okay? But you can't stream. So when people talk, or you see the cityscape about fill-in sites, et cetera,
yeah,
that's what they're really talking about, is the ability to really have full functionality. So layers of network. Your house is a network. Your Wi-Fi is a network, and part of that network.
okay,
So when you do comparisons like Salt Dome Church, remember, it's not just about height, location, and what it covers. It's about these other things too. What can I put in there? The
okay,
biggest concern with the church steeple is that I can't fit what I need in there to do the job for the area.
But you guys are building the steeple, so you could build it however you want and make accommodations for whatever equipment you want to put in there.
Well,
By the way, you'd be changing the foundation, according to the plans, the foundation would be changing, the
Yes.
actual steeple itself.
well, that was gonna get to the other question, okay, go ahead.
Let me just.
Go ahead,
okay,
go ahead.
Sorry. So the whole thing would be built from the ground up with a new foundation, right? So with the model that you guys did, to accommodate that 4,000 pounds of equipment. Now, when you say 4,000 pounds of equipment, the antennas are 4,000 pounds?
the antennas, the radios, the radios,
The radios don't have to be in the tower though,
they do
right?
now.
Okay, the radio, so wait a second, I just want to make sure that we are on the same page and I'm
Mhm.
absolutely clear on this. So the transmitters, the antennas all have to be together, is that right? The radios have to
There's
be
still
with the,
equipment on
with
cabinets.
the antennas.
There's still equipment on cabinets.
Okay, but the
But the-
weight is in the antennas.
Yes,
So the antennas with what they need are 4,000 pounds.
on a traditional array, yeah.
Per radio,
carrier.
per carrier.
So,
Right?
so if you look at this, and we did a lot of
No,
engineering.
I understand, I think. yeah.
This, you can see, when you do a tower, you have about 10 to 12 feet horizontally.
Mhm.
You're not gonna have that here.
It depends how far up you go with the steeple.
That's as far as we constructionally could. We went
And,
as far as we could.
and that was the question I was gonna ask is, when you write up this lease, like what is the design of
So
the
the
people?
concept is that steeple have to be taken out, a
Okay,
new one put in. We have to reinforce
Mhm.
the footings and everything else on that part of the building and
Mhm.
church. The
It's like a
equipment will go in
separate
the attic
Okay.
area. And so you basically.
and what about the height? Cause I remember that was an
The
issue.
height is gonna go up roughly, let's see, it's not substantial. If I can,
We're at 83 feet now.
and
That
you're
would
going to
go-
110 or so.
Right, and the figures presented by the people that did the study it's 120 feet. So we're.
Yeah, but we can't fit
I
antennas
understand.
in the top
Right,
spire,
right,
part of the
So the
spire.
tower itself is 120, but the
It's
usable
83
space.
there.
Right, so-
It's probably.
So we have a lot of, we have some constraints. Even so, we did the engineering study to see if it could be done.
Mhm.
It's not easy to do. Okay, I'm gonna lease it with the church and see if the carriers are okay with it.
Okay,
But the town needs to be prepared to move forward with the salt dome, because that may never fly.
yeah,
And the reason why it may never fly is not just the coverage difference.
okay,
It's gonna be the amount of equipment you can put up here.
understood.
So,
So I just want, just to be clear, the transmitters have to be with the antennas, and there's a small amount of equipment that is inconsequential that can be somewhere else.
well, it's consequential, but it's, you know, I'm not an engineer, so I don't wanna speak to that, Sam,
Right.
but
Right.
the big difference
Mhm.
be in the last 15 years is we used to have big shelters with racks of radios.
Right, Adams Lane is an example.
All of that, that
Or
doesn't exist
Back in
anymore.
Pound Ridge, right?
Now you have an antenna that handles at least two frequencies, so it's really two antennas in one.
No, here, yeah.
And then you're gonna put an 80 to 90, even 120 pound radio head right behind it,
Mhm.
so there's no loss,
I hear you, yeah.
okay? That then gets tied to traditional equipment cabinets. What those cabinets do today, I don't even know.
Right, right.
But I know the radios are right behind the
They're- I
antenna.
mean,
But let's back up for a second, because if,
So I just wanna make sure.
because
that
they're
antennas
going
are
to
1,000 pounds.
they're going to rebuild the steeple from scratch with also the latest steeple cellular technology with
It's
whatever's
fiberglass.
built in and what have you.
It's aluminum now.
But so there's going to be compromises, but since they're building it completely from scratch, that they can
I think
theoretically
To some
optimize
extent, but it's not,
optimize some of these things.
It's an existing structure, but not.
Here's one of the ways.
Yeah, it's gonna be
The
brand
church
new.
would actually look better.
Well, I mean, that's the
I
other.
agree.
well,
The church would actually look better.
That
It really
the
would.
steeple is way shorter than
The steeple
it
is
was
The
traditionally.
steeple is not well
what it-
designed, it's not appropriate height for that building or church.
Right.
It would actually look better than it does today. And that's one of the reasons why we don't want to quit trying,
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
because we've done enough work already. Let's give it a shot.
So the next.
However, I will say, and to your
We
sentiment,
can work parallel.
you gotta work parallel to some degree if you want to really be serious about fixing this.
Hmm.
I'll make a commitment. Look, I'm not a carrier. I'm
Yeah,
a developer. I happen to have a build-to-suit agreement, one of the few companies that have it with Verizon in this area.
mhm,
And they trust us. We do really good work. But I'm not in charge of their decision-making or
Understood.
their funding. I can just present things. And I think it's smart for us to present both still, because they're the two viable options, and see
Mhm.
what they say. But I think the town board, whether they like it or not, whether they want to be in that position or not, are gonna have to make a decision on the salt dome at some point.
and to that, this proposed referendum that we're talking about, is the idea that the referendum would be
Well, that's my idea.
on approving the salt dome only, or,
I don't know what other decisions that we made
But
by
that-
a referendum, a public referendum.
Yeah.
I just.
I
think
can't think of
a-
anything either.
Like,
I mean, I
that's-
think
that's a
Bedford
decision
did a
for the town
referendum
board,
and they
but-
actually got,
So every time we've done a referendum on the cell tower, we've won by somewhere around
Yeah,
80%.
because if you take a referendum that says, can we build a cell tower in Manny's garden? Then everyone except Manny and his next door neighbors are gonna vote yes to that, right? It's,
Yeah.
it's not a fair way to decide.
The point
in my
is, and I'm gonna be, very blunt about it,
Uh-huh.
because we work with municipalities, and it doesn't matter what the politics are, what party
Yeah.
is, it doesn't matter. These are difficult decisions, and not everyone is comfortable making them. When a town board is not comfortable or cannot secure the votes that they need to move forward, they should put it out to the public. If it is something that the public needs, let the public decide if the board can. That's my feeling. That's
Okay.
you're listening to Manny's opinion
yeah,
from doing
yeah,
this
yeah.
for 30 years
Yeah.
or so. It's like, if you can't make a decision, or if you have a locked board, does that mean nothing happens?
Yeah.
I don't think that's right. I think the public has a right to make a decision if that's the case. If the leaders they elect can't decide, let the people
So
decide.
what I would love for us to think about as a group is being able to furnish the town board with enough background, enough transparency on each of the sites that's been considered to allow them to feel comfortable making that decision. Because, you know, just when I think back to what the town went through with the closure of Lewisborough Elementary School, kind of a larger group voting to place an undue burden on a smaller group that isn't the minority, but are burdened by something more than others. It's very divisive. It's not a nice thing. And I think I agree that, you know, this is something that we really have to try and get done. And if we can't get it done, you know, in other ways, that's something we have to explore. But I would really love the town not to go through a scenario like that again, because I don't think it's nice.
So what you're proposing is sort of a report that we would put together, to summarize everything we've discussed about sites and present that to them.
I would hope that they would be watching this, whether it be live or in review, you know.
Well, I imagine Tony is, but I don't know that.
Well, the town board being, having a vested interest in what's going on, that this is a.
Yeah, and I want to be very careful to make sure you all understand. I'm not going to be pushing anything. I'm
Understood.
not going to
Yeah.
do anything other than what we think is smart and the best thing to do. We're really waiting for, you know, the town board to make a decision on what they want to do here. And this is not uncommon. You know, we work with boards on difficult issues like this all the time. And, you know, I will say in this particular situation, knowing the town, knowing the land, I doubt that anything's gonna change,
Yeah,
okay? And we still have other areas in town that are deficient and need some help.
well, that's part of my feeling as well, is that, you know, we need to.
This is the big one.
We need to address this
Yeah.
one, and it's still, you've made the case that this is what the carriers have focused on as the next.
This is the
one.
next, they will not fund another site in town until this. The only other site they're gonna fund that helps Lewisboro is the one that we're working on Route 35 to bridge the coverage between 684 and the site at the LVAC.
Okay,
All right, that's what we're working
so
on
let's,
now.
we'll come to that in a second, but so,
But
Yeah.
after that and this site.
yeah,
There is no, we've looked, there is no funding from any of the carriers for anything else. And I think that makes sense, because if this is their biggest hurt, until they fix it, why are they gonna spend any more money here?
So I wanna ask a quick question while you're at it. As you were just saying, you're waiting on the town board to decide, right? So why bother with putting a potential lease together for the church and just put it to the town board?
I think we've
Don't
already
understand.
tried that and they haven't done anything, so I'd like to have another option in play.
So the-
Plus, I actually think that, and this is maybe I'm not being a good businessman here, but I live here.
Mhm.
And if I can convince everybody to go there, I like to do that. I'm not sure if I can. So far, I haven't.
Well, we don't know, because we.
But we don't
haven't-
know. But if we haven't, you know, things change. Like, so if I told somebody, come on this church steeple, I think it's great.
Mhm.
Oh, what do you have? Well, nothing, just an idea.
Mhm, right,
Now, if I go to them and say, I have a lease, would you like to lease on this space?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Maybe
at least
that's a
with
di-
engineering plans.
Maybe that's a different
Yeah.
conversation.
Right.
I think I would be irresponsible to just say, no, I'm gonna put it all on the town board. They have to make a decision.
right.
Mhm.
And that's that. There's only
Okay.
one way to skin this cat. I don't know if that's the right thing to do. And we bothered the church already. We've done the work. It's not much more work. That's the way I look at it. And I think if the town, if we're gonna put this on the town board to make an ultimate decision, if I'm a town board member, I wanna make sure that option's not viable at all before I make that decision. Actually, I would probably just decide to go forward, but, you know, I'm trying to.
Okay.
Be
So
someone
let me
else.
see if I can sum up the best we can.
I just have a
Go ahead, go
question.
ahead.
So the steeple, would you be doing the rebuilding or would
Yes.
so your company would do the
We
construction?
we do the full development of these sites. The carriers just basically bless it. in
Rent and
contract.
rent space from it. Right.
And we need their rent money. That's what we need.
Right, okay.
Yeah. But I think I don't know what you guys want to do, what you're gonna suggest. That's what I'd like to do right now. And, I will also tell you, this is gonna take some time. If anyone thinks they're gonna get coverage in a year, you're not. I just built a site in Sagaponack at Village Hall, right across the street from the Wolfer Estates. And that thing, and Verizon, was I built it as fast as I could. I got Verizon in there. And they have to wait on their own Verizon landlines until this summer to get fiber.
Wow. okay.
What's lucky for us, what's lucky
And that's
for
the
us,
biggest hole in the wall.
is we got a fiber that's right down Spring Street here.
So-
we're left
Yeah.
Main Street.
So this
Yeah.
takes some time.
Okay.
Even when everybody says, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
You're gonna be a year before you have
Yeah.
coverage, you know? So
There's all the more reason to move concurrently with,
Concurrently, just have a parallel path.
I think that's the smartest thing to do. You know, that's what I would advise to do. I don't think we should give up 100% on the church people,
Mhm.
but I think it would be foolish to think that everything's gonna change all of a sudden.
So we went by
so there,
Scarborough Church,
Mhm.
Scarborough Church, which is in Scarborough.
Yeah.
And they actually did their own steeple and they rent directly to the carriers and they have the carriers in and it's the monetarily, it's extremely different.
so they actually built the steeple themselves.
They have their own steeple and if you look at the space.
Actually,
their
Sam,
project-
I built that.
Did you?
next
But
time.
it's higher, right, that is higher. The church itself is on a hill,
Uh-huh.
so it's higher,
So,
so you know, like,
so this was
Oh.
back in a different era.
right,
I
right.
will tell you, Sam, that people are trying to get off that thing.
What do you mean, the carriers are trying to get off? But they have a 5-year lease, so they could drop it in 5 years.
They're trying to get off.
At the end of the lease.
Because they can't get the equipment they want in there?
Which is weird, because they have a ton of space in there.
There's also 4 carriers.
There are 4 carriers, the T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, yeah, I actually went up in the T-Mobile.
So.
All right, let's,
No,
So you see, that's,
Yeah.
Sam, it's almost an example of why the carriers have a reservation.
Right,
okay,
so
So-
now let me ask you
Go
another
ahead.
question, while you're talking about the salt dome, so there wouldn't be a base building, because all the equipment would be in the tower.
Correct.
So
We
you
would have
you
generators and
You'd have a
propane tanks on the side.
generator, but you wouldn't have one of those little buildings at the bottom.
No,
Interesting.
we actually, just so you know, it's on here. Right on the side of the church,
Generator.
we're gonna put a little stockade fence and put the generator.
Yeah,
propane
oh, no,
right
I see. that.
Okay.
Yeah.
so just so I can summarize where we are, there's a lease agreement that has been presented to the carriers or is going to be presented? It's been
We don't
presented.
have
there.
it yet.
It's gonna be presented.
It's going to be presented.
Right, so if we look back. I talked to Ray, the last time I got a message from Ray, he said. Just so we're on the same page, we have a standard optional ground leasing agreement that we will use. That was May 14th of 2024, so
Okay,
that's where.
So within the next-
Going back there, yeah.
within the next week or so, we will have a lease that can be presented
Once
to.
Ray gets back from Italy.
Okay.
we'll get that.
So that's path one that gives a concrete
Yeah.
mechanism for Verizon at least, and how Verizon goes seems to be where the others follow.
Ray is back on the 15th. so-
And so that will sort of give
Mhm.
Verizon a tangible option to get a site that they may not be 100% happy with, but it is there to
Yeah.
proceed with.
I think in summation, what we do is what we do.
Yeah,
I told you what we're gonna do and what we think is the
Yeah.
smart thing to do on our end. What the carriers do will be what they do.
yeah,
They have made it clear that Salt Dome is the only site.
understood.
Therefore, the town board should have a discussion
Yeah.
on that, because that's not.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out what we
And
as the
then we're gonna see-
AAB, what we as the AAB have control over that we can do. So we can support this lease agreement going forward that gives an option on the church steeple. I think, and Lynn's proposal to supply the town board with everything that we know about the various sites, just so that it's probably something that is gonna be a time saver, because they're whether they realize it now or not, they're gonna want it, and so we kind of
Yeah.
proactively provide that to them. And then we make clear that their option is to make a decision on proceeding with the Salt Dome, provided Verizon doesn't pick up this lease option.
Hmm.
Or decide to put it to a referendum.
Yeah, I think the town board, and I'll be happy to come and speak to town board anytime. Nothing I said is changing.
Yeah,
Nothing is wavering or waffling.
Yeah.
This is what it is.
yeah,
And, you know, look, ultimately, maybe we're not the ones to build the tower. I don't know,
yeah.
but I think.
Well, and I
that's
guess from
part-
Verizon's perspective, the carrot is that, you know, if they can figure out, Adam, if they can come to the conclusion that this church steeple would work, they have a lease, they can move forward on that without waiting for the town to figure out what it's gonna do.
I have a question for you. What's, has this worked in the past and what's the success rate been with providing release before the carrier agrees to the site?
So I think that we're making an attempt because we think it's the right thing to do. I think the success of that attempt is very low.
Has it worked in
I
the
think the
past?
success of that attempt is low for the same reason that Sam just showed us that Scarborough site.
Right.
Right now, Verizon has a relocation project to get off that site.
So has,
And that's one of the things we're trying to prevent here, and that's what they're trying to prevent, is not moving forward on the site that they think everybody is happier with,
that they want to come off of in 5 years.
but in 5 years, they say,
back
this
early.
sucks, we can't use it.
Understood.
You know, and that's the reality. And I have bad news for them when it comes to Scarborough. If you've ever been to Scarborough, where are we going? You
Building
know,
a
so
tower.
they're not happy, they wanna get off, but there's nowhere to go now. And now, trying to prove another site is gonna be extremely hard. So that's what they're trying to prevent. So if you put yourselves in their position, they're not being bad guys. They're trying to prevent making a mistake that they've made before. We're gonna try and see if they're willing to make that, maybe not make them as if, but anyway.
Yeah.
But I think the success, you know, in Sam, you know, we're gonna have a very low chance here, but I'm willing to take the chance. And the town board, and I think if we take that chance and it doesn't work, I think it gives further support for the town board to act. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, well, if our friend, and Andrew from the law firm were here, he would be advocating for, the town using its clout to persuade Verizon to consider again, the alternative tower.
He's
Yeah.
overestimating.
I will tell you.
I don't see him on here.
I know
so-
municipal governments
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
lot of power,
Yeah,
but when it comes to this, no.
yeah, and I think the other risk, which, you know, Rob, you've brought up, is that, you know, if Verizon decides that this is not a town they want to invest money in, and.
They've done it before.
Yeah,
Verizon's done it before.
Look, we have some situations like that where they're about to say, you know what, let's come back
Yeah,
in 10
yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and that's that.
Okay.
You don't get either site.
In the interest of time, before we go to public comment, because I have a feeling this is what most people are here for. Any color or context you can give us to we talked about the
Route 35.
the water tower, but the Route 35 site and what that will do.
So yeah, the Route 35 site is progressing. We're not at a point where we can feel confident that it's gonna happen 100%.
Okay,
Aren't they-
But
but it has been
They're-
approved
they're-
it's
by,
been site plan approved,
okay,
but the DEP has not approved the project yet.
okay.
I thought they were clearing trees there. I saw this.
We did clear the trees. They gave us permission to do that.
And just to clarify, this is our neighbors in Bedford are putting a tower
So this.
near
will
the
cover-
dam on next to the reservoir.
Right, this will cover from 684 to the LVAC site, so that area that still today
Which
lacks
would
some
be a big
coverage.
help, actually, because you drop calls on the.
Yeah,
on the road.
it's a really bad spot, and geographically, there's a little coverage to the north, but most of it is to the south.
Okay.
Because of the lay of the
So
land.
it's not gonna be a big help to these gaps in Golden's Bridge, we just.
No, it's not gonna help Golden's Bridge at all. It's not gonna help the gap in 120, 120, and 138, not gonna help that.
Where the
Um,
firehouse micro station is gonna
It's
go.
not gonna, the firehouse, that little spot, that's not gonna help there.
Yeah,
So all these smaller little holes, no. but
Okay,
that is a pretty big hole.
yeah,
And it's a nasty one. So we're hoping that the DEP, who has been working well with us,
uh-huh,
will ultimately approve it.
yeah,
We're almost there. It's possible that we can start physical construction in the fall.
okay.
That's why we cut down the trees. We had a tree.
So that will,
Okay,
that's a bit of good news for those of us who, like to be on phone calls as we drive to 684.
It's not just that.
Yeah.
And working with the town of Bedford, closely.
Yeah,
They have the same cityscape analysis.
Yeah, yeah.
They've done even a little bit more than that. And, they've had some drama over cell towers, et cetera. It's
Mhm.
very difficult. Look, we live in a beautiful residential area. It's hard to put towers up
yeah,
Yeah, look at
that technically
it
work
from-
and provide
from,
coverage.
Yeah.
You can see Adams Lane from Wisconsin.
What's been the total timeline for that project so far? If you're talking about breaking ground potentially in the fall, how long has it taken to get to that point with this project?
A year so far.
Okay.
Well,
And
that
that
gives
was
us a
not, and
sense of-
before that, about 4 years of search and talking to Harvey School and
Mm.
others
Okay.
in the area. So, a lot of legwork. I think that project, 4 years. But we've been working on this for over 4 years,
Yeah.
so
Six, no?
I think what we had there, what you don't have here, is a really large landowner that all of a sudden was okay to work with us.
Mhm.
You don't have that here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You guys looked at the Black Mansion site? I know they were gonna take that, the corner of 35 and 123. We had talked briefly about that little shed that's sitting there.
Yeah, another developer, I think, actually had.
yeah, that's a bad
expressed interest
idea.
in it.
That's a bad idea because it's not new coverage.
Okay, but they
They
were
wanna
talking about taking that
remove-
lattice
yeah,
tower
remove that
down
long
off
lines.
that, up on the top.
Yeah, that
there,
was an
because it's not a
economic-
Cell tower, you know what I
That
mean?
was an economic thing.
yeah, that is,
Microwave
the
tower,
update that we
cell
got from
tower.
the firm that inquired about that is that there's nothing
There's nothing
happening there.
That
Yeah,
was a bad idea, and when
Right.
we found out about it, we're like, well, number one, that's never gonna happen. And number two, why would you try and replace an existing tower that almost nobody sees?
Hmm.
Right,
Uh,
but the tower was built as a lattice tower, which isn't a cell tower, right? It's not.
no, lattice cell towers, I still build lattices, they're
Okay,
just
right,
not
right.
as attractive as the
Even nobody sees
monopole.
it.
It's a long line. It's a long line.
I thought that was
And then-
a horrible cell coverage tower.
It's not that great because it
Right.
was designed for long distance
Microwaves
microwaves over the ocean, so
Right.
it wasn't designed for what it's being used for today.
Right.
So it's not optimal.
Hmm.
But to take that down and build a new tower on the corner of 123 and 35,
No, I
what's
understand.
that gonna cover?
Well, remember the
Yeah.
conversation, the
That
conversation
doesn't make
that
any
we
sense.
had was that there was another site next to that they were talking. The
Yeah.
only reason I bring it
Yeah.
up, because we had brought it up in previous conversations that they were considering another site next door that they were gonna put.
I think-
So,
I think this is what happened, Sam, and I
Yeah.
talked to Verizon about this because they were a little
Right.
upset about their own efforts.
right.
They have a national and, enterprise and
Mhm.
effort where they were trying to get off expensive sites.
Right.
And they sent you guys proposals and other people to do
Mhm.
that here.
Right.
And that doesn't really make much sense, to get off a site that everyone's on,
Right.
build a new one that doesn't cover as much.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and they were
You know,
literally
just-
talking about
just to
building one
say-
right
just so
next
that
to
they
the.
could say
Yeah.
rent.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a good idea. for
Yeah, that didn't
Westboro or
make
anybody.
any sense to
Um,
us either.
But yeah, I mean, look, we're out there, we're working.
Yeah.
It's hard though.
Yeah,
And I think the reason why we're not working more areas in Lewisboro is because the carriers won't fund anything until this problem's solved.
Well,
Understood.
at 15 Spring Street South, you could put a 500-foot tower up for $50.
okay. And the other thing we're investigating, just for public record, is there's the tower in Golden's Bridge on the Coyle property, you said it was,
Oil problem.
we've heard is being redone in some way, shape or form, and not sure what that's gonna do to capacity or coverage, but that's the other thing that we've
That's
heard
the
in terms
Brownell?
of update.
Yeah, Brownell, Harriet Lane.
Yes,
But,
yes,
yeah, They're
yes.
probably updating their equipment antennas and add in frequencies.
Okay,
Yeah, they came by, the back tower and spent a couple of days. Verizon was down for a while replacing the antennas, and I don't know what.
Yeah, I saw
Okay.
that working there,
so that's the latest. Manny, thanks for stopping in, and you're welcome to
You're welcome.
sit through public comments if you
You're
want.
welcome, and if you
But,
think we're going in the wrong direction, just let us know.
Will do.
Any direction is a good direction.
And I think it's the only real path that's before us.
You have
And,
two paths. One path is uncertain, the other path is.
and we're,
certain,
and we're
but
all kind of
there'll be
tired of waiting and
resistance. Yeah.
talking about the same thing.
We know exactly what the resistance is, and we know, we've been hearing it for 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will move to open the public comment. Do I?
You got anything in emergency services though?
Oh, I
Oh,
don't
we
care.
can do that after public
Yeah,
comment.
we
You wanna do that? I just didn't
Yeah.
know.
Well, is there a quick update before we?
Let's close this out, let's do it.
Okay,
Do the public comment.
you'll come and they'll come and do that at the end.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
Do you want me to stay, Joe, or should I go?
No, I was just-
you're welcome to say if you got the time, you want to hear
I'll
what.
stay unless people start
Yeah.
yelling at me.
So I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. So we're open for public comment. Is there anybody in the room that has a comment to make? And if you could just state your name and residential affiliation.
Question, actually. My
Yeah.
name is Kara Whelan. I have a question about the Cityscape Future Site, the document that you guys keep referring to. Is it the original document and is it available to the public?
It is. It should be on the website. I will double check to make it a bit more accessible. I don't control the website, so it's
Okay.
a little bit difficult for me to make it easy to find, but it is a publicly available
And
document.
you're not referencing an updated version of it?
No, I mean,
The landscape hasn't changed.
yeah, I mean, there are several versions that have been floating around, but they're not really material different. The final version, whatever version is up there is gonna be pretty
Okay.
accurate, but I'll make sure that the final version is accessible. But they've been pretty consistent,
Okay, great. Thank you.
okay? Any other,
Damien Whelan.
yeah,
I guess this is, more of a question. I don't know if you are available to answer questions at this point, but I recall, well, first of all, thank you for all your work and your follow through on the options available here. Appreciate your volunteer time to take this so seriously and look at all the options. But I guess the question is, I recall in a previous meeting, there was a comment, there's a time that starts that.
The shot clock.
the shot clock?
Yeah,
Oh, that doesn't
Doesn't
apply.
apply because it's publicly owned property or it's town-owned property. So it's,
So-
if it was privately owned, actually.
Yeah. So there's no shot clock until there's a formal application. So right now, until someone leases stuff and makes something available to, whether it's us, another developer or carrier, until there's a formal application, that wouldn't get triggered.
So is the discussion about the tower, the steeple location? Will the shot clock start on
No.
that signing on the lease agreement?
Not at all.
No. Okay.
Yeah, it's,
Only the formal approval process.
Got it.
So when I file an application for zoning or whatever the formal approval process is, when you start that, when you file that application, that's when that would be triggered. Not when we're negotiating leases or looking at candidates or anything like that.
And what is the duration of the shot?
Technically, it's 150 days. What ends up happening is as long as everybody's working on progressing it, keeps getting extended.
because I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but my opinion on this, it feels like nobody really wants the shot clock to formally start. And so there's all these maneuvers to keep that from happening. So
Right.
it's formal proposal in all but
Yeah.
name for the shot clock purposes is the best I can
Yeah,
sort of summarize.
it does not apply now until there's an application. And even then, it really is just to make sure everyone is doing their job and progressing the application. Because as you can imagine, there's a lot of delay tactics and things that people can do. And that's why that rule came into effect, because a lot of municipalities, they didn't like a project, would really slow it down and delay it for a year, 2, 3, and that wasn't fair. and that's why they came up. But that only applies when you start the formal process, which we are not even there at this point.
Thank you for that clarification.
If you go to lewisboro.ny.gov/AAB, it'll bring you to the antenna advisory board.
Yeah, and it's,
It has all the reports on it and everything else.
yeah, I'll try to get the latest one brought to the top and see if we can make that easier to find.
Bless you. Thank you.
Okay, no further comments or questions?
No.
All right, oh, I see Carol Cernak has raised her hand.
Thank you,
Carol,
folks.
thanks.
Appreciate
Carol.
it.
Good to see you.
Good to
Thank
see
you.
Carol, you're the final word on our public comment.
Well, I'm not the final word, but I have a couple questions, and this is water under the bridge to the most extent, but I'm not clear why the recycling center was put out of the question. Was it because property owners didn't like it because of the view site? I mean, how many, and the other thing, as far as Truesdale, because it's my understanding that that's who needs the coverage from this cell tower that is being proposed. What is the acreage of the entire Lake Truesdale properties? And how population affects acreage? I'm not sure.
I remember you raising this before and maybe as part of this summarization report, we can include.
Yeah,
They withdrew, I think.
I
Verizon said
think
we
that
don't
is
want
right.
it, so-
Verizon formally withdrew
They withdrew
that as a.
Really?
I think so.
I heard the recycling center was the best spot in town.
Exactly.
Back at that. No,
That's what I
seriously, if you
understand.
look at the coverage maps, everybody wanted to be there, but such opposition was formed, especially giving the view.
That's
All right,
from the
let's-
lake.
That's what I said.
Right, yeah.
is that
All right,
They withdrew.
Carol, thank you for coming.
No, I'm not done. I'm not done. I have more questions. I would also like to know, once a water tower is decommissioned, who disassembles it and maintains that property?
The water tower is not being disassembled. They're taking the wireless infrastructure off of it. The water tower is remaining and being operated by the water company.
So if a tower is decommissioned, the tower still stands for perpetuity?
There's no tower.
They just have the antenna
It's
on the
physically
water tower.
attached to the water.
No, I'm sorry. I probably misspoke. If a cell tower is erected, who maintains that cell tower once it's decommissioned? Especially if Verizon only has a 5-year lease agreement.
They typically go for decades with
They'll
lease
never
agreements. The 5-year lease agreement was one that was specifically referenced to the Scarborough Church. I don't think that any of the sites in our town or in the surrounding areas have been decommissioned.
The other part to that is that in the lease agreement, if the tower, as part of the agreement is, if the tower then becomes defunct, then it's the tower, the lessor,
Yeah.
then is
Yeah.
responsible for taking out the equipment.
Okay, my next question is, I'm not sure if you all know, but the Salt Dome was approved, being built within a DEP 10-acre wetland zone. And also there's a DEC wetland zone there. And there's a 4.25 acre nature preserve that adjoins the Salt Dome property. So I'm not sure, are you gonna skirt your own rules here and propose that to the town board? Or are you gonna follow the rules everybody else has to follow?
I think we've noted that and we'll note it again, Carol, I promise.
Okay, next thing I want to know is what is the potential rental income if you put the tower on private property?
Like 2,000 a month.
2,000 a month?
Yeah. It depends on how many carriers
It
sign
depends
up to it.
And what's involved for the property owner?
Through the lease agreement.
Yeah. It depends on what's stated in the lease.
Okay,
Are you ready to offer an alternative, Carol?
no, I'm not. I'm just, I have questions and I need answers and I need to move forward and, You know, I still don't
Sure.
think the salt dome is.
No,
the one-
we appreciate your.
Okay, thanks for cutting me
participation.
off, but I'm not done.
Well, this isn't really a question and answer session, and I'm trying to accommodate you the best I can, Karen.
Oh, I didn't realize that, because you often offer, comments, so, okay, I'm done.
All right, thank you. So I'll move to close the public comment period.
Second.
So moved. So thank you. You're welcome to go if you'd like.
Sorry, welcome to hang.
So, so our last, good to see everybody. So our last item, before we adjourn, I apologize for running over here.
All right.
Is,
That's actually probably
Okay,
it.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So
It's
I
just to
think
get
we've
an
actually
update.
identified in the past that it is not within that right away.
Right.
I think we've identified several times in the past that it's not within that DEC right away, if I'm not
50 feet.
mistaken.
I'm looking at the Westchester County map now.
All right, well, I think we've
We've covered that.
I think we've covered that before, but we can, put that in the packet.
Yes.
So, so the last item is just because I think it's an important one, is just to make sure we're keeping up to date on the emergency services progress. Is there any?
Yeah, sure. There isn't a lot of progress, actually, ironically enough, today, the town's, repeater system died.
No, okay,
So,
due to,
don't know.
okay,
The company hasn't come out to look at it yet.
okay.
Who services it?
Metrocom.
So
So.
that was the new one
well,
that they just put in, the MTA system?
No.
Okay.
That's totally separate. So,
Okay.
this is the existing infrastructure that the MTA system is theoretically replacing.
Got it.
If I'm not mistaken, the installs for the MTA radios in town equipment, meaning vehicles, et cetera, for highway is slated for, I think in the next couple of weeks to the next couple of months, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay,
So they should be up and running on that new system relatively soon. And what is to happen with the existing town system is to be determined, but the town is out of local radio coverage for the time being.
completely.
Completely,
Wow.
correct, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Metrocom is temping a repeater in so that they don't lose it entirely before
Okay.
they have to transition over and or make a decision, but the problem is because of the back and forth with getting the MTA system installed and switching off of the town system, I don't know if there's funding there to repair or replace the existing broken infrastructure for the town system that other agencies still use.
I could let you with MTR 2000 if you want.
Is there any possibility of expediting the installation of the new system?
No,
Okay,
it's probably, dependent upon the company that they bought all the hardware from and their installation schedule. So the likelihood of them being able to move it up after it's already after they've been waiting for so long already is probably minimal, because where they fit them in is where they could get them in.
How long ago was the order placed?
I don't know. I don't know. It wasn't through Metrocom. It wasn't through, it's all Harris hardware. So, we don't, the local vendors, to my knowledge, don't really have much or if any involvement in it at all. So, other than that, I don't think there's anything else on a town level necessarily. Trying to think of the other departments. I mean, I know I'm also a member of Lewisboro VAC, so I know I can speak for them when I say that, they use the town system, so the town switching off of it and not maintaining it is problematic for at least a couple of the other emergency services in town. So, I mean, I think it's important that they continue to maintain it and, just at least keep it where it's at for the time being, but.
and maybe all the more reason to get cell coverage improved as
As a secondary means, yes, but, nothing beats, straight up to a radio.
What about the trunking system? LVAC, are they on the trunking system?
Like 60 control?
Mhm.
Yeah, but this is the secondary system.
Okay.
This is outside of the
Right,
trunk.
right. I know county provided the PD with trunking radio. So,
that's beside the point, but, yeah, this is just the local system that we use.
Yeah, kind of.
Exactly.
So hopefully they'll get that, figure out what it is and expedite it, and it's not a significant repair
That's too
issue.
bad that it's saying it's not ready to go.
Yeah, no, that's-
Well, but
Serendipitous.
even
Right.
still, the problem with the new system is that not everybody can get on it because it's cost prohibitive. Who's surprised by that?
No, everything's expensive, we just
Right.
spent $200,000 on radio.
Right, exactly.
It's ridiculous.
Right, so that's part of the problem with the MTA system, part of it, there were many problems that we've covered at length at this point, but part of the problem is that the town is not necessarily providing equipment to the other agencies who would stand to communicate on it, so
Sort of like.
not having done that, yeah, it's an unfunded mandate, right, so
Yeah.
not having that backing, I personally think, and this is again, personal opinion, because I'm a member of multiple agencies in town who utilizes existing infrastructure, I think it behooves the town to continue to maintain it if they're not going to provide the equipment for us to get up to speed with the system that they've decided to move over to. So that's kind of where, and like I said, ironically enough, that thing went down today.
Okay,
It is what it is, there's a temporary fix in place and we're trying to petition them to, from the emergency services side of it, we're trying to petition the town to maintain that system for the foreseeable future.
okay. Brian, thanks for that
Yeah.
update. So, before we move to, polling of the board, do we want to, take a motion on, Lynn's suggestion to put together a
Document,
report
like
of some
a
sort?
recommendation that we
Yeah.
all circulate. And
Yeah,
comment on.
yeah,
Put a Google Doc together and we can kind of.
that's a good idea, yeah.
Just to kind of say,
Yeah.
here's,
Here's
the
what
kind
we've
of,
learned.
kind
Yeah.
of just like a summary, and then,
Yeah.
they
Cut
can
and
kind of
paste.
dig into. I'm just conscious that maybe some folks haven't been on the town board throughout
Yeah.
this whole discussion.
Yeah.
And like, as interesting as these meetings are, I'm not sure how many hours of our YouTube tapes they've all watched, right? So,
They can watch them at 1.5 speed.
a real
Well,
podcast would be
you can
better.
get the instant transcript.
Exactly,
Yeah,
so,
I think it's
maybe just to kind of summarize
yeah,
what
I
the
think it's a
sites
good
are,
idea. I would
what's
say.
out of a cow
Yeah.
and why.
Yeah,
Because that's, that's one of the first questions they're gonna be asked if someone runs into them in the supermarket, why are you not doing X, why are you not doing Y? And,
Right.
I think that's helpful, and then,
So Verizon pulled out of the recycling center because of the public opposition.
That's why they did it.
Okay, right.
I'm not saying.
Yeah.
I don't care.
No,
That was the best-
I just wanna make sure it's on record that Verizon pulled out of the
Yeah, that it was a carrier
discussion for,
choice.
because of the public opposition.
Well, they,
Remember?
it was one of our very first meetings, I think,
Okay.
when there were 40 some letters, I don't know how many letters. And they presented them, they said, we got this, and they looked at the two sites and they said to them, they were similar. And
here's one.
here's one.
Yeah.
and that really pushed them toward the salt.
That was, yeah.
And that was part of my question to Manny was, okay, here we've got a site that, everybody likes, no one's gonna.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
or very
How
few
much-
people
how
send a
much-
letter
how much weight
complaining
does-
about,
how much-
then
how
I
much
like
weight does that
people,
carry?
and so,
Yeah,
can that be a pull as well as a push, and, but I understand, that the technical differences are
Yeah.
greater than they were between those two sites, right?
You're
So I
basically, you're
understand
trying to fit all this equipment into a studio apartment and they wanna build, something within
A higher-
that space.
yeah.
basically, a higher-
Right, yeah.
okay. So so it sounds like a tangible next step is to put up a Google Doc and just
Yeah.
start collaborating.
like-
on
Yeah.
pulling
I can- I
together
can-
what we have.
Start a document and send you guys invites and you can
Perfect.
edit it.
Sounds good,
Done, thanks, Rob.
thanks, Rob.
All right, anything else before we, okay, Brian, do you have any further comments?
No, I just wanna stress, I think from my personal opinion, that I just wanna stress the importance, I think, of doing these two things concurrently so that we're not
Waiting another year.
spinning wheels,
Yeah.
waiting another year, taking more time to do what we potentially already have been advised is a potential outcome.
I think we need to notify the town board of that too, and they can bring it up.
I think that's what I
Yeah.
mean is.
They need to bring it up at a
Make
public
them,
meeting.
make them well aware
Yeah.
at this point
Right.
that these two
So
avenues,
don't
these two,
spill and play.
yeah. Well,
That needs to come up,
it may be it may be the option.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
it needs to come up on,
Absolutely.
town board meeting, yeah.
Yeah. And you'll keep us posted on the lease, progress?
us?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Did
yeah.
you have any further comments, Sam?
I got it.
Rob?
I had two things, and you mentioned it, just the concern, but, there's a limited attention span and a limited investment, and we don't wanna miss an opportunity and be like, okay, we're doing it
Yeah,
in 5
yeah,
years.
Yeah,
Cause it's happened before and, you know,
Yeah.
they have a limited amount of attention span and we may
Right.
exhaust it.
Well, we've been at it for
Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah, we've been doing it, yeah.
yeah,
The other thing, and it's actually emergency services related, the Fort Pound Ridge Fire Tower is, they actually purchased the fire tower, so they own the fire tower. They've done the studies to put the footings in, and the reason I bring it up is because they want to put repeaters on the top, like solar power
Yeah,
repeaters.
which are
Okay.
untenable for the emergency services,
Oh.
period.
So they,
It would be located in Pound Ridge, okay? And the fact that they're not running power to the tower and they're just doing it solar means it's not emergency services capable. Because it needs to be hot all the time if they're gonna do it.
but are there batteries you can charge up during the day?
Yeah, so you got a week of cloudy weather and you've got towers that can't produce. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know,
trust me.
not my area.
Let's say they took the roof of the tower, which would be like
10 square feet.
10 square feet.
Or maybe-
The power of 50-watt radio, you'd have to have a monster battery somewhere and
Yeah, it's
that's
not-
been cloudy for 2 days, then you're gonna be a dead battery.
So what Sam's referring to is mission critical, that's the standard that, two-way radio, public safety two-way radio
So-
operates to,
has
so
to be,
it.
has to be hot all the
Yeah,
time.
it's gotta have reliable
Power.
a backbone to it.
Makes sense.
Right.
So solar is not really viable for mission critical solutions.
Okay. So,
Good thought, though.
but it's.
Right, oh, we thought about it.
Yeah.
We were hoping to get on there with that, but when they said it's only gonna be solar, we're like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't know.
It's gonna, okay,
Right.
and then.
Unless there's the possibility for additional solar cells on the ground that they could make.
It would have to be a
Never.
football sized
It-
field.
well, I don't-
And a house. But no, my point is though, if you got a week of cloudy weather, you gotta have the batteries to do it. That would be a building full of batteries.
Yes, it would.
Anything else, Rob?
I think I'm good.
Okay, Lynn, anything
I'm all
from you?
good, I'm all good, thank you.
Yeah, I think I'm good, except to say that, I think I said, in the October 2023 meeting, that we had to make progress, because I didn't want to continue to be talking about this, salt dome
Here we
versus, steeple issue.
Right.
And here we are in,
All right.
April 2025. So,
And how do we go like a year without having a meeting?
I know, it seemed like.
How fast time
Yeah,
passes.
I was hoping maybe if you stopped meeting, something would happen. But,
No.
Well, there were.
The original thing,
Ridgefield.
Yeah, and I think it was fair for us to say, okay, let's see what happens with that, because maybe that changes where
Yeah.
the gaps are,
Yeah.
but, you know,
yeah,
nothing is.
I think everything always circles back.
yeah,
Ray Bagari originally, Bagardi, I'm sorry, I'm sorry,
Bagardi,
Bagardi.
yeah.
He reached out
on the steeple side.
on the
Yeah.
Steeple site that they were putting something together in January of 23.
Okay, so that.
Okay,
gives
so
us
it's been
some
2
timeline.
years,
Yeah.
we're waiting
Yeah,
on
yeah,
a lease
yeah.
agreement, so, you know.
Yeah.
Which I think,
Time
I think
certainly
brings up,
favors
we
the
wanna,
salt
if we
dome,
wanna get
right?
this done in our lifetimes, we better
No.
move it concurrently.
My point is this.
Yeah.
Time favors the salt dome, right? So we've been
Yeah.
waiting so long and now we're fed up and we wanna move because
Yeah.
we haven't got a lease agreement, and we
Yeah.
don't know, because
Well, I mean,
it's
let's
super easy, look, let's just wait
see,
them out.
let's see what,
Let's just wait them out and
see what the lease,
happens.
when they have a
Yeah,
lease in front of
yeah,
them,
yeah.
what happens, and, we'll
Anyway.
hope something, transpires there. So, I move to adjourn,
Second.
so we, are adjourned at 8:23 PM. Thank you all for,
I'm surprised you didn't want to.